you might be surprised what you're able to find. So I would say don't give up, try, and through trial and error, it will become so much easier. My name is Laura Kurtzberg. I'm a training director with investigative reporters and editors, and I'm also a freelance data journalist. I'm also an adjunct professor at Florida International University, where I teach data journalism and data visualization. Analyzing satellite images can help you with many different story types. For me, I usually use it for environmental data storytelling. So it's really good to identify deforestation in the rainforest. We can also use it to identify other types of disasters like floods. However, outside of environmental reporting, satellite imagery analysis is also very useful for describing anything that you can see from space. So you can show the changing patterns of a growing city, where the buildings are being built. You can show a plane crash or a container ship crisis like has happened in recent years, and you can show the site and the aftermath of these kinds of crashes or disasters. You can also show the devastation from war or from strikes that have happened and show the before and after of an area that used to have one look from space and now after war is looking completely different. So you can really use satellite imagery analysis for many different types of stories, and especially for a lot of environmental indicators. The best way to start would be to use Copernicus browser, which is a free software from the European Space Agency. Copernicus browser is completely free and public. So for the global journalism community, you can find images there for every single country, every region of the world. And the satellites pass over each region of the world every 5 days. So you can get pretty frequent images, even though it's not every day. So you can have some images that are from last week and this month and see something really current and download that for free. That's the most useful one. The only problem with that is that it is very low resolution satellite imagery. So it is not high resolution enough to see individual trees or cars or buildings. It is more overview, more from far away. If you get a taste for it, you get interested in it, then you can go further and you can start to learn the skills to use QGIS, to use other software, and to start to look underneath the surface of what is visible. Because satellite images, they're not just a picture. There's a huge amount of data available from the sensors that goes beyond what you can see. And if you want to be able to work with that data beyond what you can see, then you have to learn some technical skills. But it's not impossible. There are many free courses, many tutorials that help you learn as a journalist how to interpret the information beyond what's just visible to our eyes. I was part of an article for GIJN with some other colleagues that use satellite images. And one of my colleague said that he uses the satellite imagery to look at the area that he's going to go for his investigation, to look at the landscape and where is the roads and where are the buildings, and to basically do some pre-reporting before he goes out into the field. So for him, looking at the satellite imagery comes very beginning at the very start of his process, before he even goes and does some interviews and does some field reporting. So it can be really at every stage. It could be before you have defined the main focus and you're just looking around to see if there's something that you can spot. Or it can be something where you already have an idea in your head of a story that you want to pursue, and you'd like to look at the satellite imagery to see if your hypothesis is correct and to see if there's something there visible or something you can see in the data that verifies that this is worth investigating. There's really something happening. So it's kind of a cop-out to say oh, you can use it anytime. You can use it at the beginning, you can use it in the middle, you can use it at the end. The workshops that I've been doing, they have dealt with using satellite imagery at the end of your process to make a really beautiful visualization for publication. When you have already done the ground truthing, you have already done the interviews and the field reporting, you know that there is a deforestation happening in this area of the forest, and now you just need to paint that picture for your audience, and you need to create a visualization that's really compelling. So I was talking about making a map using tools like Canva and Flourish that help you with data visualization, and importing the satellite image into this image editing software to create something that looks really nice, to draw a circle over the area of interest and put an arrow that says, hey audience, look over here at this thing that you can see in the image. And that part is really towards the end of the reporting process. It's about the presentation, the communication, once you have gathered all of the evidence already. One of my favorite stories to mention, it's from a few years ago now, so it's not that current, but it is the story Aquazonia, which is a story about the freshwater ecosystem of the Amazon rainforest. So in Aquazonia, we use satellite images to detect the areas that have been impacted by different human factors, like deforestation, degradation, building roads, urbanization, aquaculture, agriculture, and more. And we were able to build an index that takes all these data layers into account and creates a measurement of how much impact has been done to the freshwater system in each micro basin. So this is a really fun example. We used a lot of data, a lot of satellite data, but we didn't necessarily use the images themselves for a visual analysis. Instead, we used the data that was derived from the sensors on satellites to create our own index and create our own visualization map. If you're using a tool like Copernicus browser, you would need to figure out, did the satellite pass over my region of interest on a day where something is visible to me? Like maybe something happened in my area of interest on September 2nd, but I don't know if the satellite passed over my area in September 2nd. So I have to go to Copernicus and see if there's any image around then, if there's too many clouds to see, if whatever happened is visible. You know, if the satellite passed over at 10 a.m., and the disaster happened at 5 p.m., then maybe it did not get captured. So finding the right image, it's a gamble of whether or not the satellite was able to capture what you needed it to capture. So part of it is luck, and part of it is investigating through different satellites and different softwares to try and search for an image that shows what you want it to show. Yeah, and sometimes that image doesn't exist and you are out of luck, but many times it is possible to find this for free. I think a lot of journalists now are using satellite images more and more to augment their research and in their investigations. So I would say if you really have no idea as a beginner, a great place to start is by looking at those inspiring examples. You can look at their methodology and the sources that they cite in their articles to try and reproduce or to try and follow in their footsteps and do something similar in your own reporting. I would just like to encourage journalists to try and use these tools. For many of us, when we approach a software tool for the first time, it can feel very overwhelming, especially if there's a lot of technical terminology like satellite bands and spectral analysis and all of this stuff, remote sensing. We haven't heard this before maybe, but I would just like to tell the journalists who are interested in this topic to give it a try, and through trial and error, to try and see if this is relevant to your analysis and your investigation, because you might be surprised what you are able to find with something like Copernicus browser for free, open, public, and maybe could really augment your story. So I would say don't give up, try, and through trial and error, it will become so much easier to use satellite images.